Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. We're so glad you're with us today to stay curious. Today, with a great supporter and friend of the American Space Museum, Mr. Jonathan Ward.
Hey
Hey,
guys, how are you?
Jonathan. Great to have you here. We know we have a lot of your fans watching. Jonathan's one of the, well, we can call you an influencer in the world of space for sure. Jonathan's written 4 books we're going to talk about, and just has been a friend of this museum about 12 years and has what I call a very Renaissance man. That he's involved in a lot of things that a lot of people aren't, and I consider myself a Renaissance man. There are not too many people that got their fingers in many things as you do.
Well,
But glad to have you here, Jonathan.
my
How are you?
pleasure. Yeah, I'm doing great. It's always wonderful to come down here, and the weather is beautiful in Florida. Thanks for setting it all up for me. I
Yeah, we
appreciate
hit the 80s today for the
Yeah.
first time in 2024.
it. Wow. Okay.
All because you down here. What brings you down here?
I just, it's been a little bit more than a year since the last time I was here, and this is, for me, this is the happiest place on Earth, let alone that place over there in Orlando.
Yeah.
Kennedy Space Center is the happiest place on Earth.
Absolutely.
And I have a lot of good friends down here, so it's just always a joy to come down. And then to find out that we're going to have the Crew 8 launch later this week, too. That's just icing on the cake.
Right after midnight on Leap Day,
Yeah.
February 29th. And that is a great thing. An odd thing about the what's happened at the International Space Station that we've pointed out for the last 6 months, there's not been an American male on the space station.
I didn't realize
And
that.
Mike
That's-
Barrett will
yeah.
break that
Huh.
up there. So think about the space history of America. When was the last
Yeah.
time an American male was not orbiting the Earth?
Yeah.
And I think I didn't have a chance to research that, but just a little side note that Mike Barrett's going to go up there for his 4th or 5th trip, I think, a great astronaut
Hmm.
with Jeanette Epps, a new woman going up, an African American, right here at the end of Black History Month, I think is a cool thing. But we want Jonathan's going to talk about his career a little bit, being a book writer. He's, like I say, he's really been an influencer with some of the things that you've done. Jonathan and I were talking beforehand that can you imagine all the people that you know now that you didn't know 10 years ago?
It's just absolutely incredible. I was looking through my, was looking through my photo albums, and I realized it was in 2009 was the first space gathering I went to. I went to Space Fest 2 out in California because I thought, boy, this is my only chance to get to meet a lot of these astronauts who were my boyhood heroes. And
Yeah.
little did I know where that was going to take me. And just in the course of 15 years, it's just been a really fantastic ride.
Yeah, it is. It gives hope to everyone out there that it's never too late to fulfill your dreams or do something important in life.
Absolutely. No, it's funny. I wish I had had the kind of passion for my real job that I have for what I've been doing since I left gainful employment.
I hear that. I'm busier in my semi-retirement
Yeah.
than I ever was working for except for the news business. I was
Yeah.
really into the news business, but I was a salesman for 30 some years, and though I enjoyed every minute of it, it's nothing like dealing with the people who made space history on a
Absolutely.
daily basis. Let's talk about a little bit of history that we made the other day. Our 1000th episode was officially February 27th, if you can believe that,
That's
Jonathan.
amazing. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you very much. So you're 101.
Yeah.
And we're going to celebrate tomorrow with some friends just stopping by and saying hi on Leap Day. I thought it'd be kind of appropriate to focus on that. And so if you're in the area, if you've been on the show, if I've not reached out to you, come on down. We're going to have a cake and just a little informal Stay Curious at 4 o'clock there. But I got to give a lot of credit to this to my partner, Marty Winkle, who's Marty and I probably missed about 10 of these. We've had
Yeah.
Bart Martindale interviewed Ron Garin and Fred Gregory for us, astronauts. But Marty and I have been pretty much the odd couple and brothers putting this thing together. Marty, defend yourself there, my friend. Say hi to our Stay Curious watchers out there on episode 101. 1001.
Well, hello, Stay Curious watchers, and Mark, and Jonathan.
Good. Well, you chime in with any
Yeah.
questions you have, Marty, and let us know that people out there have a question for Jonathan, because we found that's worked out real well. We've had a couple of shows with Mike Leinbach, who you know very well, and Terry White and some other people, just people asking questions, and it fills up the hour. But here's what your recent accomplishments have been. These books by you. Let's see, I wanted to get the logo up off the top
there we
there.
go.
And tell us about these 4 books.
Absolutely. Well, the first 2 there, Countdown to a Moon Launch and Rocket Ranch, were the first 2 that I wrote, and actually wrote them as one book. And for me, that's one of the reasons that I love coming down here, because the American Space Museum was such a fundamental part of my being able to do the research into what it was like to work down here. Those 2 books were about what it was like to work at Kennedy Space Center back during the Apollo era. And I ended up interviewing a lot of people that came through the museum or were working here at the museum as docents. And so for me, there's always going to be that very special tie to the museum here for helping me get those first 2 books put together.
Well, our executive director, Karan Conklin, she always talks about that special tie, is that she allowed you to take materials off of our premises, out of our document area there, warehouse, whatever you want to call it, to the chagrin of some of the board members and so forth, that said, "What are you doing? We don't know him," But not only proved Karen's good judge of character, but your character as well in there, because let's face it, I've loaned things to people that never came back.
Well, looking back on it, I had no business asking her to let me do that, and I was very surprised when she said yes. But and I'm not at all surprised that an armed guard meets me at the front door now every time I come down here as well.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you leave. We
Yeah.
shake your
Yeah.
pants. These 2 books, though, if you haven't read them, they're available on Amazon.
They're
I'd
still,
imagine.
absolutely.
What, in a nutshell, what was we going to learn from those
Rocket
books?
Ranch is what it was like to work down here. It was a little bit about how the Kennedy Space Center came about. And for me, it was a really interesting organizational study. Part of what I used to do was looking at organizational culture and leadership and things like that. And to realize that Kennedy Space Center, the launch team came from Marshall. You had the Manned Spacecraft Center people here who were tied to Houston, and you had another group of people who were tied to Langley. And so you had these 3 distinct organizational cultures that were working together. And it was really kind of an interesting thing to hear about, that the spacecraft people didn't know what the launch vehicle people were doing. And actually, that's what a lot of people have said as they go through and now look at Countdown for a Moon Launch, is actually now when everything arrived at the loading dock, say for Apollo 11, everything arrived here at Kennedy Space Center in January of 1969, and then they had 6 months to test it and put it all together so that it launched on July 16th, 1969. And so this goes through, we've all seen pictures of them stacking the rockets and things like that. Nobody ever put those into context for me. And so Countdown for a Moon Launch, I actually went through and put up week by week what was going on. And so now these pictures are in order, and you can figure out what exactly is going on and why this was happening when it was. So,
Like Jonathan says, I've learned it's a convoluted technicals out to all these NASA installations. And we've learned that KSC pronounces acronyms different than Johnson Space
Really?
Center
That's
does. Yeah,
interesting.
there's some acronyms that they don't. Marty, can you think any of off the top of your head? If you do,
Because I worked on it, we call it DPS and JSC calls it DIPS, which is
okay.
Digital Processing System.
there you go.
So that's
Yeah.
just a simple example.
So and they wouldn't ever change. Okay,
Interesting.
we're gonna keep it that way on there. Of course, Jonathan has written 2 great books that should be on any Space Geek shelf. Bringing Columbia Home, with Mike Leinbach. We'll talk about that in depth here in a minute. And Through the Glass Ceiling to the Stars, the book about a wonderful person, Eileen Collins there. And we'll talk about those in depth here in just a minute. Marty, you've got a question?
We have 2 questions, Mark.
Okay.
First one's from Mark Usiak. Jonathan, will you and or Eileen be coming down for Shuttle Fest or for the ASF Hall of Fame ceremonies?
Okay, I am not sure whether Eileen is going to be able to be down here. I think she has something else going on when Shuttlefest is going on. I'm not sure what her schedule looks like. I will definitely be out of the country at that point, so I won't be able to come.
We'll talk
Yeah.
about why he's out of the
Yeah.
country. He'll be taking beautiful photos like this, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what her schedule looks like.
Sure.
I have not heard her saying she was planning on coming down, but she will fit it in if she can. I know.
Well, putting the Astronaut Scholarship Foundation and Shuttle Fest in the same sentence, thank you, Mark Usiak, because we're trying to build this Shuttle Fest up for the space workers and astronauts to get some love from the space workers, because the event that was out in Arizona, Space Fest, was that, and there's a void now that that's not going on, and it's just logical that we have a place here, and we're got a whole program lined up April 13th, so we'll be promoting that a lot on there, and we certainly know that Eileen Collins will want to be part of it somewhere down the line. We can feature one of her missions. Marty, you have another question?
Yeah, we have a question from Dave Stange. Jonathan, with all the interviews you have collected, I don't have my glasses with me, so I apologize. Jonathan, with all the interviews you have had collecting information for your books, what person do you remember the most?
Wow, what person do I remember those? That's it's interesting because I would grab bits and pieces of interviews from people, like asking Gene Cernan one time when I found out about the delay that happened when the launch sequencer shut down before Apollo 17 launched, and I asked him at one of these things. I said, hey, did you what were you thinking when you heard the countdown stop at T-minus 31? And he said, I thought, that's it, we're not going. And but I think I was thinking probably the one that I liked the most was, for me, the most enjoyable one, the one that really sticks in my mind, was Norm Carlson, who used to be the NASA test conductor for Apollo 11. He and Jack King and I had Jack King, the voice of Apollo, who did the countdown for Apollo 11. The three of us went out and just had drinks one afternoon out at one of the restaurants out along at the port, and just listening to the two of them talk for hours about what it was like. It was just an amazing kind of thing, just to sit back and listen to these two icons of the space age.
That's a good one, Jack King and
and Norm Carlson.
Norm Carlson, we have Norm Snoopy in the. You saw that in our workers gallery there, Snoopy Award, and then you walk away from those saying, "Gee, I wish I could have recorded that."
Well, actually, I did record it.
Oh,
and
you
so
did?
I did. Most of my interviews are recorded, and so people have also asked me, like, would you ever make those recordings available? And with the case with Norm and Jack, they both passed on, so there's probably not a reason not to do it, except that there's a lot of ambient noise because it was outside. But
well, there's another book in the works,
that
right?
could be,
or short stories are good too.
But I just, again, it's we were talking a little bit about this beforehand, but I get, I pinch myself that I get to have these kind of conversations with people. It's a real privilege to be able to be in the presence of people who work so hard on so many different things. Mike Leinbach and I were talking yesterday about the Intuitive Machines landing, and Steve Altemus, he's the CEO of Intuitive Machines. He was the day-to-day manager of the Space Shuttle Columbia reconstruction hangar.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was the one that's completely set up the reconstruction.
Mike knew him very well.
Yeah, Mike was the up-and-out manager, and Steve Altemus was handling the day-to-day operations and setting that all up. And I was asking Mike last night, I said, do you, looking back on that time in 2003, would you ever have guessed that this man next to you is going to put the next American spacecraft on the moon? And he just said, it's just, he said, I knew he was brilliant then, and I just had no conception he'd be able to do things like that. But you never know who you're going to run into that somebody is going to do something really spectacular in lots of different walks of life.
That's right. We're privileged to have a few of them on our program, and you're privileged to meet them, like you say, from time to time. Before we get into your books and stuff like that, let's find out a little bit about Jonathan Ward. Where'd you grow up? How did you get into this spacey thinking of yours?
Okay, well, I was born in Japan and lived in the Washington, D.C. area most of my life.
So your parents were diplomats or something?
Well, they worked for the military. So, but I lived in the D.C. area from 6th grade onward. And when I was in think it was between my 9th and 10th grade of school, I finagled myself a job as a summer tour guide at the National Air and Space Museum.
Wow.
And Mike Collins was the director.
And we'll just
And-
cut to the chase. You're an
yeah.
excellent tour guide now, and we'll tell you where in a
Well,
minute.
I was a young, know nothing guy, but this was the summer of 1971 when Apollo 15 was going to the moon, and the Air and Space Museum was in the old Arts and Industries building, which is like from the mid 1800s.
Oh my.
So it was just this very Victorian looking kind of building with a lunar module sitting in the middle of it. It was really kind of a strange place, but so that was getting to work there as a kid is like being in a candy store. Obviously, in my teenage years, I worked for the government. I did not work. I was going to be a physics major. I was a physics major for a year. I ended up getting a degree in psychology instead of physics. When I saw what the life of a professional astronomer looked like, I wasn't quite sure that was for me.
I know. I did that myself.
Yeah. And then
Too many girls run around at night for me.
Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah. Well, I remember seeing my physics professor coming up out of the particle physics lab, at the end of the long weekend, looking at bubble chamber things all weekend, and he would say, like, what went on in the world this weekend while I was down there, and I thought, maybe that's not what I want to do. But I worked for Boeing on the space station program when it was Space Station Freedom back at the end of the 1980s, and just thanks to people like Robert Perlman, who runs collectspace.com, I started finding out around the turn of the current century that you could start finding artifacts online, things that came from the Charlie Bell collection, the old Apollo types of things. And so I started gradually getting in touch with people through that and collecting a few bits and pieces, and that led to the books. So it's really been the last 25 years or so that I've really kind of ramped back up into the space area.
shout out to Robert Perlman and his Collect Space. He was given the Holcomb Award recently here for his outreach, and a great source that we often share things on Collect Space on our Facebook page there. So shout out to you, Robert. Always an invitation to come on Stay Curious.
Robert is
when
an
you're in town.
absolutely amazing guy.
Yeah, I've never personally met him, and looking forward to it, but he was on our board of directors here at one time. Marty's got some comments and questions here for Jonathan Ward.
I have a comment from Carlton Bailey.
Uh-oh.
Jonathan, if you ever need a private paparazzi to follow you around your cruises, just let me know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you.
because Chris Callie's private paparazzi is Mark Usiak, you see,
Okay.
the
Right.
great artist Chris Callie,
Yeah. Oh
and
my
friend of ours on there. So good pitch there, Carlton, but I'm sitting beside him. I also know how to take pictures, okay? So next one, Marty.
Okay, Gene Wright's asking or stating both. Congratulations on being selected as creative consultant for the new documentary about Eileen Collins.
Okay.
James Hans, I think it's Hanses, was for the movie First Man. Are you a bit intimidated?
Am I intimidated? Well, this is
One, he did write a book about Eileen Collins we're going to talk about, and
Yeah.
they're going to put it into a documentary, and you're consultant on that. We'll show
So
you a slide of that in a minute.
Yeah, I
Thank
was
you,
gonna say,
Gene, for
thank you,
reaching
Gene.
out.
Yeah, I was going to say I think there's less pressure on me, especially since it's just a straightforward documentary and not a dramatization like First Man was. So, Professor Hansen had some real interesting issues trying to maintain movie accuracy. He had some really interesting talks that he gave at Space Fest about what it was like to work behind the scenes
On First Man.
when First Man was being made and how he would, basically almost get thrown off the set.
Oh, really?
Several times. Yeah.
Well, I liked it.
Yeah.
I characterized as kind of a Hallmark movie of the space era with the backstory of the families on there. It's Neil Armstrong's story. Quite emotional, really, in my mind. How did you take it?
It's funny that I've still not seen the movie because it uses a lot of shaky cam, and I get that makes me motion sick.
Oh, it does.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I may have to try it out at a home theater. I could definitely not see it in a big screen theater.
All right. Well, take
So-
your Dramamine.
Yeah, I
there
think I'll have
before
to
you
do
watch
that.
a movie. We're going to talk more about that, Gene, and thank you, Gene Wright and Ken Kramer, both instrumental in our first year or so of Stay Curious when we were doing it with holding up pictures of everything instead of the screen lab, and Appreciate Gene and Ken for their support of us all along this journey here.
Well, they are very typical of people who are so generous with their time and friendship, and just like Gene and Ken have never met a stranger.
That's right.
They are both.
And Gene just wrote a fabulous book, So Sisters, children's book that's great for adults, and Gene promises she'll come on and talk about that. It's already won many awards I've heard out there. We'll tout that out there. Tell us a little bit about you're like me. You got hooked on stargazing in the backyard, and you still do that. And we're going to brag a little bit here in a minute about something you did for the first time that nobody else did. But when did you get your first telescope? How'd that happen?
I got my first telescope was a $15 Toys R Us telescope. It was made out of it was cardboard. It was a 3-inch reflector, and it had a little Brownie camera. Remember the Brownie cameras?
Oh, yeah.
This one had a clip that would clip onto the eyepiece, so you could take pictures of the moon with it.
Huh.
And so that was in 8th grade that I got that. I think I was, about 8th grade. And then the next year, after I learned how to use this one, my dad gave me a choice for Christmas. He said, you can either have a musical instrument or you can have a telescope. And he said, I don't think you're good enough at music to make it, but why don't you think about getting a better telescope? So I got a 4.5-inch Tasco reflector, which I held on to until, so I got that in 1969, and I held on to that until I moved to North Carolina in 2011 and just gave it to somebody else. But that was, it's something I've always been really interested in. Took that down to there was a total eclipse on March 7th, 1970 that went right up the Carolina coast, and so we drove down to see that and built a little solar projection box for the telescope so we could watch the partial phases and then look at it.
Awesome. So, what a great memory with your dad there. Yeah. That's for sure. And you're still doing it. As we're going to talk about. That's part of his life as a tour, the lead astronaut on the cruise ships there. Yeah. But you might not know how to play a musical instrument, but I think you do. But you were telling me that your voice is actually on 2 Grammy Award-winning albums.
That's correct, yes. One was the Benjamin Britten War Requiem. It was a live performance that got the Grammy in 2000 as the best choral performance.
Well, you sing tenor?
Baritone.
Oh, baritone, okay.
And then the other was one with the National Symphony Orchestra that got the best classical album in 1996. So I don't have a Grammy statue or anything like that, but I have a little lapel pin that we got for.
Is that how many people were involved in that choir?
Was
it the same choir?
Yeah. It was the same. It was with the Washington Chorus. It used to be called the Oratorio Society of Washington, but there were about 200 people in the.
That in itself is a whole other cult, like us astronomy people. Really,
absolutely.
See, that's why I say he's a Renaissance man. Yeah. All kinds of things he's involved in, and you enjoy doing them as best as you can. I know.
Absolutely.
In there, Marty, we have another question.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's go back. Let's anything other about your past that you'd like people to know about?
Try to.
You've got a wonderful partner, I know.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very fortunate. She's sorry she can't be down here with me.
What's your wife's name?
Jane. This is Jane. Okay. She's hopefully listening in. Hi, I'm
Jane.
proving you that I really am here today. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but she's definitely coming down with me next time.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, let's first talk about bringing Columbia home. There, I've got my copy here. The way Mike, I don't know how you approached Mike Leinbach on this, but when he was on our show doing questions and answers a couple weeks ago, what he was impressed with you, Jonathan, was he said, I don't know, I have a book in me, but I don't know how to write it. And he said, Jonathan says, I'll do all the heavy lifting. Yeah. And he said, you did in there. So how'd that come about with you? And the launch director, Mike Leinbach, launched the last 37 space shuttles. Yeah. And then he spearheaded the recovery of our wonderful 7 astronauts and what's considered the 8th member, the ship.
Absolutely. No, it's funny. This is leading right back to Norm Carlson. Norm Carlson, the launch
test conductor,
had said that the best hire he ever made was Mike Leinbach.
Oh, okay.
And I never got a chance to meet Mike, and then Norm passed away, and at Norm's memorial service, I recognized Mike from TV, seeing the pictures, from the shuttle launches, and I saw him standing off to the side, and I went over and introduced myself, and I said, would you like to go out and have a couple of drinks and tell some stories about Norm, because Norm always spoke so highly of you. And we went out to what's now Pier 220,
Okay.
and with my wife and another friend, and we had drinks and lunch, and at the end of that, Mike said, I always wanted to write a book about Columbia, and but I never had the discipline to do it. And I just said, let's talk about it. And we got together another week and a half later, and the next thing I know, I've got Sean O'Keefe, the former administrator of NASA, calling me up at home and wanting to talk for a couple hours. And so Mike is certainly well respected, and
He is a real facilitator too.
And knowing he was on board with the program, there was no problem having any access whatsoever to anybody I needed to talk to from NASA or any astronaut. They were, Mike is just absolutely real stand-up, stellar guy.
Well,
So,
it's and the book's done very well,
mhm.
and authors don't really get rich on this stuff. I
Yeah.
understand, correct?
That's
But,
correct. Yes.
I mean, I want to break that illusion that I've always had the illusion of writing a great book on space or something, but sailing off into the sunset. But a very poignant and respectful book, and I think really the only book you need to read about the tragedy. And it's a must. And what did you find? What part of this book surprised you the most?
Well, it was interesting when Mike and I started working on this. Mike wanted to tell the story of his team here at Kennedy Space Center, the people who had been involved in the recovery and the reconstruction, and he wanted it to be kind of focused on the debris analysis part of the thing. And in talking to Jerry Ross, who was a former astronaut Jerry Ross, who was helping to run some of the recovery operation out in Texas after the accident, he said the real story is in eastern Texas. You got to come and talk to people here. And so, very much to Mike's credit, when I approached him with, hey, would you mind if I go out there and talk to these other people, because it may take the book off in a totally different direction. And he was very open to saying, well, let's talk to him and see what it has to say. And I think that's what really made the book so much more well-rounded, was that we have now so many, like with the Apollo books, so many different perspectives of people who were on the ground, literally on the ground, doing so much of this work. And again, what a privilege to sit there and talk to people whose lives were forever changed by that accident. It was not anything that they ever, they had nothing to do with NASA whatsoever, and suddenly the shuttle literally shows up in their backyard.
The compassion of the residents, the outpouring of love, the support for NASA.
Yeah.
It makes my goosebumps just thinking about
I just,
how you wrote about it. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, I really appreciated it. When I wrote the book, before I started into it, I had looked at Unbroken. It was
Gunter Vent's book.
no. This was
Unbroken Chain.
no. This was the same woman that wrote the book about the racehorse. I can't. But Margaret Hillenbrand. Hillenbrand. But anyway, she had. But this was the story about the guy that got shot down in World War II, spent 30 days in a life raft, 40 days in a life raft, and was captured by the Japanese and tortured. But the book, I mean, it showed me that you could write a very compelling nonfiction book without having to do any kind of real elaboration. The story is going to be exciting, and it will tell itself.
There's you and Mike there, of course.
And so Mike was very much, I mean, we wrote it kind of just in a no nonsense, and we don't really need to embellish or add flourish to it, because there's such a strong human story to it that it came out. Seabiscuit, that was the name of the book.
Seabiscuit, there you go.
Yeah.
That's why we have these senior moments.
Yeah,
Jonathan.
exactly.
It eventually comes around, and we're glad about that. Tell us something about Mike Leinbach that we'd be surprised to know about.
I was just
that
thinking,
he won't get mad at me for asking.
Oh well, no. Mike is a great guy. Mike was, I guess, was a hippie back in high school, and he actually went to Woodstock he told his parents that he was going to the beach, and he went to Woodstock.
Wow.
And he said he came home from the beach. Hopefully, Mike, I'm not stealing your thunder here, but he said he came home from the beach and or came home from Woodstock, and his dad said, "Well, how was the beach?" And Mike said, "Oh, it was great. We had a good time at the beach." And his dad holds up the front page of the Washington Post, and there's Mike's picture at Woodstock.
No way. that is a good one. All right. That is something else, huh?
Yeah.
I dated a girl one time, and her first concert was Woodstock.
Wow.
Interesting. He's not a hippie now, I'll tell you that. But that's a good one on Mike there. Well,
We got a comment.
he is a great supporter of the American Space Museum. He's always there when we want him to do something. In fact, Karan Conklin bequests one of our volunteers a private tour that Mike gave out there at the Space Center.
He was telling me about that last night, and just
Was he?
how much he enjoyed that, and what a great idea that was.
Yeah. Connie McDaniel and Anita Truex were the beneficiaries of that. Connie's a great volunteer, and Anita, our hardworking office manager, merchandise person here. And I've had that tour. In fact, Marty bought me that as a birthday present. Bought me Mike's tour out there at Kennedy Space Center, and he's not doing it anymore for personal reasons. But that's why when things happen, you got to jump on them, because you never know when they're going to go away.
Well, I got to tell you what, Mike has been. He and I are best buds. I mean, it's fantastic to work with somebody on a project, and then just to feel such a strong personal connection with them as well. He and I, it's just great to
Awesome.
continue that friendship, and
Yeah.
that he and I will just call each other for anything. It's just.
Well, that's
That's-
good.
that's
That's
nice to have.
you make some fast friends at the end of your life that you never expended. I mean, I look at it like, at our age, we're on the backside of this thing called
Yeah.
life, and it's just wonderful to have friends like that, to call them friends. That Mike is one, like so many space workers, he's so unpretentious about what he did, and yet 37 times, 5 people. He said goodbye to over 200 humans that left
Yeah.
this earth,
Mhm.
and came back, and
Who were trusting him with their lives.
absolutely,
To make the right
and
call.
he's so humble, and like a lot of them are. I think that's the key to the NASA mystique. Marty, you have a comment?
We have a comment from Tom Usiak. Jonathan, after photographing the end of Apollo, your 2 books were invaluable to me in learning how things worked with processing the Saturn V. Excellent work.
Thank you very much, Tom. Well, it means a lot coming from Tom and Mark. Those are 2 of the best photographers. Well, I've got the third one here with me, right? I've got it.
Yeah, let's hear that,
But,
CB.
Yeah. No.
No, they've photographed over 70 shuttle launches, each one of them with as professional equipment as you can get, Hasselblads and things like that. And their work is just exemplary, and we are so happy they're friends of ours and are allowing us to use their work in any way we want.
Absolutely. Again, some of the nicest people you'll ever
Yeah.
meet. I met them at some of the space gatherings and things like that, and just became really good friends with them. So.
And Marty's talking on the USIAC family microphone, their donation
Ah.
to our humble podcast here. Well, let's move on to your any final things you'd like to say about
No,
bringing Columbia home?
we've been very grateful that it's received such a warm response from around the world. We were looking the other day. I think more than 50,000 copies of it have been out there now.
How many languages? Just
I think right now it's still just in English.
Okay.
But between audio and digital and things like that, and so we're very happy that our publisher is continuing to keep it in stock, and we're of course extremely grateful to everybody who's been reading it and still provides us with very heartfelt comments. There are people who who are involved in search and recovery, or just happened to live in the area when it happened, and they just said that brings back so many memories for them to read the book.
Well, we're enjoying a conversation here with Jonathan Ward. As you see there, he's involved in a lot of things, but more importantly, he's involved in promoting space in all areas, from human space flight, uncrewed space flight, to astronomy. And let's talk about your book with Eileen here, and then we'll get into some other things there.
Okay.
Let's show you the picture with her. I had those out of
there we
rack
go.
there. there's Eileen Collins, and you know, well, just you tell everybody why she deserves this book and this notoriety.
Well, this is, obviously she is, it's again, talk about somebody very humble. She will admit she was the first to get to do a lot of these things because she came along when it was just starting to open up to women, that the Air Force had just started accepting women as pilots. So I mean, she was not in the first class, but obviously one of the things that people talk about is like, well, you were in the right place at the right time, but you also have to recognize that opportunity, and you have to be well enough prepared that you can take advantage of that if something is offered to you, that you can step up and be the absolute best you can be. And so Eileen was somebody who proved herself from her earliest times behind the stick of an airplane that she really knew what she was doing. I saw a great comment the other day. Somebody said, everybody makes a big deal out of Eileen being the first woman commander, but they said they also they neglect to tell you is that she's also one of the top 3 pilots that NASA ever had.
Yes.
And so
heard that a lot, that she probably had the best landings of a lot of the shuttle.
Yeah.
I mean, like right on the mark landings and smooth, because she got trained on flying these big C-140s?
C-141s,
C-141s, and that sort of stuff. And Marty, you've met Eileen Collins. She's been at your Grumman events many times. If you turned around and didn't know it, you'd think she was selling Avon.
Yeah.
Not that and that's a good thing, just a very nice person, like you can see on this beautiful smile of hers there with Jonathan.
She is again, one of the nicest people you will ever met. That was interviewing Jim Weatherby, her first commander.
Yeah.
And he said, she's got this blue steel running through her veins, and she's simultaneously also the nicest person I ever met, he said.
Jim Weatherby, 5 times a commander, once a pilot, drummer for the Max Q astronaut band. You're in there. Well, how did this come about?
So this was Eileen wrote the epilogue to Bringing Columbia Home, because she was we had Bob Crippen, who was the first pilot, write the prologue to it, and then we had Eileen as the return to flight commander for the next mission, write the epilogue. And I was really surprised to find out after the book came out that she'd never written a memoir. And I kept every time I would see her at an Astronaut Memorial Foundation, the Week of Remembrance thing, I would just say, have you considered writing the memoir? I don't care if I do it, maybe a woman would be better suited to write it for you, but somebody needs to do this. You can't just not have your story be told. And then she called me the end of April of 2020. So this was right after the pandemic hit. And she said, all my speaking engagements have dried up for the year. I've got all kinds of time now. Maybe this is the right time to write a book. Do you want to work on a book together? And so we did it entirely virtually. It was all done by phone and email during the course of the next year. We finished it almost exactly a year to the day from that very first phone call. And we were hoping we'd be able to get to go out to Johnson Space Center or Kennedy, and the centers were still closed down for a whole year after we had the contract, and we still had to produce things. Luckily, able to get things through the National Archives online, and then Eileen, of course, had a lot of pictures of her own. But
that's amazing doing it all online. And I know, sharing with me some of that process, you guys talked sometimes 2, 3 times a day, right?
Yeah. And that picture you had up there of the two of us together, that was the first time we'd been together since we started working on the book. And at that point, we had already this was at the last Space Fest. We had already turned in the manuscript about 3 months before, and so this was our first opportunity to get a picture together with the cover of the book.
Well, tell everybody a quick synopsis of what they're going to learn about Eileen Collins in this book.
Again, the concept that astronauts work really, really hard. They will, they may not outthink you, but they will outwork you every time that they possibly can. When somebody lit that fire under her at the end of her high school career, there was no holding her back whatsoever. And that's what I see in working with her every day too, is that, she is a force of nature, just like, well, you talked about Tom Jones the other day. He's always got something going on.
Yes, right.
Astronauts are incredibly generous in terms of the amount of themselves they give back to their countries. I think this is one of the things that John Glenn was saying in The Right Stuff was, that, hey, the country put us here. We need to do things to help to help thank the people of the country. And I think you feel that sense of duty and wanting to give back and with people like Eileen or with Tom Jones as well.
Oh, well, I'll throw Nikki Stott in there.
Yeah.
I just can't believe
Absolutely.
what Nicole Stott does,
Yeah.
globe-trotting and
Absolutely.
promoting her art for space. And Mike Baker's become a friend of ours. He loves talking to people at the Space Center. And yes, and may we remind you, 611 human beings have orbited the Earth in all eternity.
That's
Hugh
amazing.
Harris used to say, and 75 of them are women, and the 76th woman's going up EPS on hopefully Thursday after midnight there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the other two are rookies or not. I know Mike
Well,
Barrett's.
there's a cosmonaut going up.
Okay.
Well, right. Yeah.
Hadn't researched that yet to see if we can add the 611, but we're going to have 76 women up there, and that'd be 612, of course. And that's according to the Association of Space Explorers. That I confirmed that with astronaut Charlie Walker when he was on the show, and a big ASE person on there.
Well, I got to tell you, give you a little bit of a hint as well about how generous Eileen is. She and I were going to be doing a appearance at the Udvar Hazy Center, the Smithsonian's big hangar outside of Dulles Airport, and my two children and their families live in that area. And I said to Eileen, I said, would you mind having dinner with my kids and my grandkids while you're up in town? And she's like, sure, I'll be glad to, so I have a picture of all of us sitting around a table together sharing a big Italian dinner at a restaurant. But she spent a lot of time talking to my oldest grandchild, telling stories and engaging them in wanting to continue to push and do
Sure,
great things.
inspiring them.
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
How cool is that? So this is a big deal now. Actually, I saw it on Collect Space on there that Eileen, your book about Eileen is going to be turned into a documentary. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. Really, really excited about this. Right after the book was announced, I was contacted by Keith Haviland from Haviland Digital. Keith is another person that I met at one of these space gatherings 10 or 12 years ago. And he is somebody who has an outstanding space collection of his own, very deeply passionate about it. And he started producing movies about 5 or 6 years ago. He did The Last Man on the Moon documentary about Gene Cernan. He did Mission Control.
He did that where Gene's talking outside next to the wood fence and all that. Okay,
he did that one. He did Mission Control: The Unsung Heroes of Apollo. He did Chasing the Moon. He did an Armstrong documentary that was done with the two young Armstrong children. He did Lancaster Spitfire. So this is somebody who really deeply gets aerospace and space exploration. And when Keith called me up and said, would you guys be interested in a documentary? I was where do I sign? This is obviously absolutely the perfect person to do it. And he's got a great director, Hannah Berryman, who is a UK-based director. And so we started filming footage of some of what they would call the B-reel kind of footage of some of the things that are going on in the background, like Eileen at her grandparents' house in Elmira, New York, mowing the lawn. Things like that. So there's some great local color in addition.
A riding mower or push mower?
I'm sure it's a push mower.
Oh, wow.
It's a very small area, but so there's going to be a lot of seeing the human side of Eileen, as well as what she did. Obviously, what she gets celebrated for, her fantastic achievements in space. So it's going to be an interesting process. They'll be shooting the whole rest of this year, and it'll probably come out early next year. So.
Well, we're looking forward to that. How about giving us something about Eileen that we'd be surprised about?
Well, you mentioned that she's, you might think she was an Avon salesman or something like that. It's like when she comes to town, we eat at Subway or we eat at, a sandwich shop, and she wants to go out and have pancakes for breakfast in the morning and just kind of like blend into the background. And she just really enjoys being just a normal person, just a regular everyday person. She does not like to be recognized in public if she's, not expecting it.
I've run into a few astronauts like that,
Yeah.
that you wouldn't recognize them in public, unless you really were a super space geek.
Well, and I guess when I think about, for me, well, of course, I am in Eileen's world. I am not of her world, right? I have to remind myself she is the one that did all of these amazing things and stood up for this incredible pressure and scrutiny and spotlight that was on her when she was doing her missions, and to have been, had to be on, and you can't let a bad, a wrong word come out of anything you say, because everybody's focused on you. And I can see why she doesn't want that to happen. She says, like if suddenly I'm now Eileen Collins, the astronaut, that I have to be kind of a different persona than I am if I'm just kind of like hanging out.
I'd say she was probably the cover of Time magazine, People magazine, those type of things back in the day.
It's just
but if you get a chance to ever hear her talk, which I did maybe 20 years ago at East Tennessee State University in Johnson City, Tennessee. And I've had several encounters with her since. She used to be president of the Astronaut Memorial Foundation. That's the Space Mirror out here at Space Center. So don't miss a chance to see Eileen Collins. When is this going to come out, Jonathan?
I think early next year. I'm not 100% sure of the timing on it, but
well, we certainly hope we can see it at the big Max screen in Kennedy Space Center.
Keith's other movies have been out in the theater as well as streaming. So I think it's going to make a big splash. And I love the title Spacewoman. I think it's just absolutely amazing.
How much is your involvement in this?
I'm there to, I'm helping them trying to find archival footage or other types of things. Of course, I've got all of my interview notes and things like that. So as a consultant, I'm basically there just to kind of give them some background information,
fact checking,
and if they need me to do, But they've got a very professional team that's doing
obviously
doing all the heavy lifting.
That's I've seen all those documentaries that you talk about from Haviland.
What was, I can't remember. I think it was Andy Weir from The Martian who was saying that his job, once the book was being made into a movie, they said your job is to sit back and cash your check and shut up, right?
Well, we hope you're cashing some checks out of your book there. We seriously do. We're very proud of Jonathan Ward here. Wow. What he does for the American Space Museum. I know you talk about it even around the world, maybe. And any final thoughts of these two books before we go on to another chapter?
No, again, it's one of those things I just pinch myself that I get to do. I'm deeply humbled that they trusted me to help tell their stories, and for me, that Eileen she's made it her mission to go out and sell her story. She's glad the book is out there. She likes the way it came out. She feels 100% comfortable with it, and so that's I made my customer happy. That's what more could you ask for?
Well, what's the next Jonathan Ward book we're going to have to clear our shelves and wait for?
I'm not quite sure what that's going to look like.
Okay.
I'm always looking for interesting ideas. It's funny because the last two just literally fell into my lap.
Right.
Not anything I planned for, but if anything interesting comes up, but you were talking about on the last lap here, you start thinking about how many years you got left, and do I have 2 years to put into doing a project?
Yeah.
Or would I rather be doing something else?
That is a consideration.
It would have to be something. It would have to be something I'd be really passionate about, or really convinced would be a story that has to be told.
Well, we're going to have a comment from Marty.
We got a comment or a question from Mark Easiak. Jonathan, ask Mark about when we met Eileen coming out of the elevator at the Hyatt.
I was there for that.
Yeah, that's right. She was here for a scholarship foundation thing, and we were at the Hyatt Place. Dana Lavoisier's the manager there, treats us right. We're going to have Shuttle Fest there. Well, we went up to see the launch viewing on the 5th floor, and Mark was staying there, and we hit the elevator, and it stops on like the 3rd floor, and Eileen Collins pops in, and she starts just engaging us, immediately, and I think once we hit the ground floor and talking in the lobby for like 25 minutes or 30 minutes, and I'm like saying, man, I hate that I have to leave an astronaut, but I got to be somewhere else here. And she was, just a delightful person talking about the wanting to know more about the museum. She's heard about it. She wanted to be involved. Mark, of course, being the photographer there and so forth. But yeah, just not wanting to get away from us. So like, oh yeah, hi, goodbye. I got to go on my way there. I mean, it was like, hey, wait a minute. Tell me a little more about that museum you're talking about.
Well,
she's like that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And she is, and she's
Thank
very,
you, Mark.
She's very genuine about that too. She is genuinely interested
Yeah,
in everybody,
she is, yeah.
and she will ask people and stop and listen to what they have to say. She's a very intent listener.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's
again, it's someone I feel like we could reach out to, and you got to be kind of careful with how you treat some astronauts. Sometimes some don't want to be bothered.
Yeah.
And let you know it, and others, are there, because who we represent on there. Definitely, I'm just a pawn on the chess set of this space world here in Florida, but we feel like it's just great to bridge the space between you with these stories of these wonderful people.
Yeah. Eileen is a big fan of Kennedy Space Center. I mean, it comes across pretty clearly in the book that she really enjoyed her time. Here's what they called a Cape Crusader, which was an astronaut who helps prepare the shuttle through its processing flow. To run various tests and make sure the switches are in the right configuration and everything. So she said she got a lot of hands-on time, got to meet all the people who were involved in the processing flow down here. And so before she even flew a mission, she felt like she knew all the operations down here really well.
Well, what's odd is like this little encounter with Eileen and so many other people. She's so warm. I mean, I don't even think about getting an autograph. That would be, but you leave her thinking like she's going to ask you for your autograph. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's kind of really, really, really wonderful lady. And Eileen Collins, we know you'll be watching this. So your good buddy Jonathan here. So we welcome you to our museum anytime. And we'll know that she'll be involved in our Shuttle Fest in the future as we tout our wonderful astronauts and great things they've done. Well, let's move on to like this Jonathan Ward's other life as he, like Superman, whips off his suit and gets behind a telescope.
I do have another suit on underneath of that one after I whip off the suit.
There you go. And this is something that we enjoy following you on Facebook, though sometimes I'm saying, really? I'll never be there. He's just showing off.
Yeah.
But no, we're happy for what you're doing now in life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I started, with the Auroras. I went on an Aurora cruise about 5 years ago and really enjoyed that. Found out that I didn't even know there was such a thing as cruise ship lecturers. And I've been involved in doing public outreach, as you were mentioning, through the Solar System Ambassadors Program for NASA and things like that. And so, one of the lecturers said, you're qualified to you'd be capable of doing this kind of thing. Why don't you? And he told me how to go about applying for it. And it's a pretty grueling audition process to have to do it, because they want you to be able to put together talks that are going to be entertaining, engaging, scientifically accurate, and aimed at an audience that probably knows very little about what you're talking about. But you want to be able to engage them. It was like it was interesting. So I'm doing this on cruise ships. This very last one I was on last month.
There's your setup there.
Yeah,
There
was one of some of the cruise ships have planetariums on board, which is really.
Well, we're going to go back here this way.
But
show you that.
Yeah, so this was Auroras in Norway back in October. But you see, there's the Pleiades there and Taurus the Bull. Yeah, and I also will take people out on the deck for stargazing sessions. When you're out in the middle of the ocean and you get the captain to turn the lights off at night, it can get really nice and dark out there. And so, I was showing people the Southern Cross and things like this in my last cruise, and then.
You're around the equator. Your last cruise.
Yeah. Somebody said to me, "Is like, remind the people that those stars are actually each of those is an individual sun." And I was like, I've got to remember there are people who don't know that.
No.
And
No, you're
don't
right.
realize the stars are separate suns, and most of those have planets around them, and things that we kind of take for granted. But it's like you really do need to kind of step back and bring people up to what's going on here, because otherwise it sounds completely overwhelming.
What exactly? I had a boss one time tell me that everyone knows this. The sun's not a star; it's the sun.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. This is a scene of what are we looking
So
at?
this is in Norway, and there's that's a solar telescope they had on the ship. Some of the ships even have telescopes. So this was a solar, had a solar filter on it, so you could see the solar surface and things like that. We were docked for the day. The problem with trying to use a telescope on a cruise ship, obviously, is that if it's moving around, the waves can rock it back and forth, or if the captain's not steering a steady course, things are drifting in and out of But here we were docked in a fjord in Norway for the day.
What cruise lines are you?
So this one was on Viking. I've also worked with Silversea and Cunard, and so they all have similarities and differences. But
Where are some of the places you've been?
I did, Norway and the Baltic. I've done across the Atlantic Ocean and around South America. Have gone from Singapore to Australia in the last year. Then the most recent cruise was San Francisco to Hawaii to Samoa to Fiji. So
All right, you take your wife on these tours?
yeah, when she wants to. Yeah. So yeah.
Oh, she's burned out on it already.
Sometimes she chooses to sit them out because she's got other things that are going on.
Yeah.
Too, but.
Yeah. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, what a cherry on top of the sundae, huh?
Well, I have to shame myself as an astronomer here, because I'm going to be probably the only American astronomer not in the country for the eclipse that's coming up.
Oh wow!
I got a request from Viking to do a 6-week long cruise, which will go to Italy. And my wife and I, Jane was in Italy back in the 1980s. I was in Italy in 2000, but we've never been together. So I thought, okay, well, I've seen 2 other solar eclipses. This would be a good opportunity for us to see.
You can miss
Italy
that
together.
one.
Yeah,
See the Naples fish market and all that good stuff.
So
Uh,
that's the kind of really hard trade-off you have to make sometimes. But
6 weeks, huh?
6 weeks, yeah.
That's good. So what do you do? I mean, that's a good opportunity. Maybe just be writing something.
Well,
too.
it's funny. The time goes by very quickly. On this next one, for example, there's the first leg of this is going to be from Buenos Aires across up to Brazil, and then across the Atlantic to Spain. And I have to do 10 talks during that time, plus the stargazing sessions, plus planetarium sessions, plus a number of Q&A forums. So I'm going to be pretty busy.
It's work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is a good opportunity to find a quiet spot sometimes and just sit down and jot down spots. So I actually got some ideas for another project on my last cruise. So.
How about the language barrier?
Most of the cruise lines I've been working with is all English speaking people. Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to show a couple as we're ending our wonderful conversation with Jonathan Ward. Marty, I'm not going to show that. I'm not going to show that space history stuff I racked up, because we spent almost a great hour here with you today already. But you met, obviously, you meet some dignitaries, probably some VIPs and so forth along the way. You brought a picture of 2 of them, though, for us here.
Well, I thought this one was interesting. I finished my first lecture on the history of astronomy, and this woman came down and introduced herself, and she said, "I'm the great-great-great-granddaughter of Sir William Herschel, who was one of the most famous astronomers back from the late 1700s." So
absolutely, and his sister Caroline.
And his sister Caroline, that's right. And so she said, "I used to play in the tube of the great telescope, when I was a kid." She said we would just run around on the inside of the tube of the telescope.
Sir William Herschel, a giant in astronomy, and then his son, I think, was the first one to take a photograph. Through a John Herschel.
Right.
But that's amazing that I didn't even know heirs of him would exist out there.
Yeah.
Interesting thing about William Herschel is he is the he discovered Uranus.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. He discovered the planet Uranus, and he was convinced that the solar system was full of life.
Mm.
And that there are probably living creatures on the moon. They didn't understand the moon didn't have an atmosphere at that time.
Yeah.
But a lot of astronomers, even 100 years ago, said, well, why wouldn't there be life everywhere?
Sure.
And
yeah.
here in the 21st century, we're trying to make it hard that life is fine. And when I think it's just teeming everywhere, and roly-polies in the caves of Mars,
Yeah.
and little creatures in the moons of Enceladus' oceans there beneath its ice. But we met. Here's another interesting character.
This was a tour guide in Samoa, and he actually asked me to take a picture. He wanted a picture with me because he's a big NASA fanboy. So even halfway across the world, you'll meet people who are enthusiasts about space. And so
A tour guide for what? Lion fighting? Or-
he was just wearing this is native Samoan, this is the way they get tattooed and everything like that. And he's actually spent a lot of time in the States, very, very fluent in, English and things like that. He just likes to dress up as part of the Samoan culture tour kind of thing.
Well, it's like going out to Disneyland
Yeah.
or somewhere like that. Yeah, that's interesting.
But I mean,
That's,
there are people, for the folks of you who are interested in space, as those of you on Facebook know, that there are people all over the world who are following what goes on down here and really appreciate all that happens on the space.
you do too. And you ever been around Sonoma, Australia? It's on the East Coast. That's where Cliff Watson's watching today.
Oh,
He's
wow,
a big
okay.
fan of our show, and I actually met Cliff during the last Great American Eclipse when he was here with Dave Renicky,
Oh, okay.
a very popularizer of astronomy in Australia. So, Cliff, I know you're enjoying this conversation with Jonathan Ward. We've got Steve Jokums. He's got a business, Jonathan, called the Lake County Spaceport on
Wow.
the shores of Lake Michigan, and he does decals for models up there. Steve, thank you. He's been a generous contributor to our show. We got Mark Usiak, Cynthia Rossi, Dave Stange. Dave was mad that he didn't catch our 1000th show live, but neither did you, Marty. So you're in the same boat. Marty was out for that day enjoying a baseball game with his brother down south there.
Very nice.
Of course, Mark, Cliff, Tommy Usiak, Tom Celentanos up in Connecticut. Doug Forrest is watching outside of Pasadena, California.
Well,
Carlton Bailey out there at the Canaveral Groves. Thank you, Gene Wright and Ken Kramer, for chiming in today. Gary Gerald, he's our Vidalia onion farmer in Georgia.
Okay.
Connie McDaniel's watching. Thank you, Connie. Patrick Atkins is watching.
Patrick.
Is that a friend of yours?
I know Patrick. Yeah.
And Lillian Guziak is watching today. So we're always getting new names every.
It's our Lillian.
What?
That's our Lillian.
Oh, our Lillian. Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, our Lillian Guziak. Okay. Yeah. I was gonna say rhymes with Uziak, and she's our grant writer and wearing a bunch of other hats here. So. Thank you for watching there today. A little astronomy here that we'll end with, because Jonathan and I always love emphasizing to people that, no one owns the original when it comes to astronomy and looking at the things in space, whether it be the moon. I'm always talking about, no one owns the moon. You can write a poem about it, think of the hundreds of songs about it and so forth. Well, you did something kind of extraordinary here that we're going to show on this slide here, or not so extraordinary as it is innovative, maybe. Let's go there. There we are.
Yeah, there's every year you can observe there are 110 objects that the French astronomer Charles Messier identified back in the 1700s. He called them non-cometary objects. He was a comet hunter, and he hated running across these little fuzzy blobs of light that didn't move from night to night, because he kept thinking he discovered a comet. But it came up with a list of these 110 objects, and a lot of them were very famous, like the Andromeda Galaxy, the Great Nebula of Orion, the Pleiades, and things like that. And there's one time of the year, well, there's two times of the year, late March and in early October, that from mid-northern latitudes, it's theoretically possible to see all 110 of them in one night, if you start right at sunset and work right until dawn. And so I had never seen them all, and I thought, well, I wonder if it's possible to take pictures of them all if I set my telescope up to look for them. So this image there.
Yeah.
This is all 110 of them. I got them all in one night 5 years ago. Completely. It was one of those things. I would have been happy if I'd got 75, but to get all 110.
Yes.
And it turned out when I submitted it that I was the first person east of the Mississippi River ever to image all 110 of them in one night.
Where'd you submit it to? What,
There's a Messier database.
Yeah,
and a database of all the people who have done the marathons and seen all the things. So there were 2 people in, I think, Arizona, 1 in New Mexico who had done it with night vision goggles or something like that. And then I happened to do this my first time out. And
Wow.
so I'm quitting while I'm ahead. I'm not about to go out and try that again.
It's always the end of March.
Yeah.
Back in Tennessee, we get up on the mountains of Southwest Virginia. I've seen them twice, where you're trying to just see them,
Yeah.
and we make a quick sketch or two. But to make a photo of them,
Yeah.
that's a whole other thing.
So I do. Yeah,
Where were you located to do that?
This was in North Carolina,
Okay.
just north of Greensboro, and I set it up to take.
Where you live in
Yeah,
Greensboro.
so I did 6 30-second exposures for each object.
Uh-huh.
And then when I started getting ahead, the hardest part was planning what order you're going to look at them all in.
Right.
You want to get
Well,
some of them was set right after sunset, and so you want to get those first, and then work your way across. So this is what the map of working your way across the sky looks like, starting from the right hand side and working my way across to the left. And so yeah.
Yeah, well, we've lost a lot of you right there, but to
Yeah.
you astronomers out there, you're going, oh wow,
So,
I want to copy that. That's how you do it in,
Yeah.
in a quick turn there.
yeah.
But these are everything's from galaxies to star clusters to what we call globular clusters. We think every galaxy is surrounded by these older
Yeah.
balls of stars, and then of course your nebula is like the Great Nebula of Orion and so forth in there.
The great thing about astronomy is that amateurs can still make important contributions. You know, they're still discovering comets, and they're still discovering asteroids and things like that. And it's difficult to say that about other sciences, but amateur astronomers are not looked down upon at all
No,
by the professionals.
the solar astronomers,
Yeah.
the activity of the sun constantly going on, as written Solar Max. And Jonathan's right. If you've been to a star party at the nearby club or whatever, that's great. Have you ever seen a group of physicists want to, or biologists want to dissect a frog for you?
Yeah.
To show you all that? No, astronomy, I think, hits the genetic fabric of humans, because we all want to look up. We might not understand it, or we might not look up for long, but look at the attention this solar eclipse is getting
Yeah.
up there, and these are rare things
Yeah.
that happen. So, not only bridging the space between you with spacey stuff, but astronomy too is what our friend Jonathan Ward's been doing so well doing it. Jonathan, I want you to leave here with our Rocket Hobo patch
All right.
in honor of our friend Ozzy Osband, who was out at the Spaceview Park for decades, conducting the countdown from shuttle launches to the latest out there. We lost him in August, so take that with you and put that on
My
your
pleasure.
on your
Absolutely.
jacket up
That's
there.
beautiful. Thank you.
Is there something you'd like to share with everybody before we
No,
say
I just
goodbye to you till the next time?
be as generous with the American Space Museum as they are with you. They have fantastic work they do down here. This is where it really happens here, from the people who really made the things, made the rockets.
Absolutely, the
Yeah,
space
this-
workers are our bedrock of
There are places, there are small museums like this one and the Columbia Museum in Hemphill, Texas, that really deserve your support, because they are all labor of love for the people who were involved in these projects. So,
Well, thank you, Jonathan, for
My
your
pleasure.
labor of love with these wonderful books and all that you do outreach across the world. It's just, I know, like you say, you couldn't probably create this scenario for you at this stage of your life.
yeah.
So thanks a lot. You mean a lot to our museum, and we always talk about you frequently in some of your endeavors. So stay in touch and enjoy the sunshine down here in Florida.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark.
You're
Thank you,
welcome.
everybody.
And thank you, everybody, for watching today. Marty, is there anything we need to clean up on our Streamlabs production board there?
Nope, we're all clean.
All right. Well, we're glad to have you back in the saddle and have episode 1001 in the books here, all because of you, your generosity with your time and supporting the American Space Museum. Tomorrow, we're just going to have an impromptu show about celebrating February 29th, Leap Day.
Wow.
It comes around every 4 years. That happens to be the 22nd birthday of one of our favorite astronauts, Jack Lausma, who's really going to be 88, but he really was born on February 29th. We'll probably share a little bit about that. And if you're local and want to come by and get a piece of the celebration cake that we'll have here at 4 o'clock. So until next time, I'm Mark Marquette saying I can't wait to see you again to bridge the space between us.